time, space. In between those two singularities also exists madness. Within madness exists a world similar to ours, but with one stark contrast. This is a world ruled by reviewers.
Have you ever wondered where bad movies come from? The projections from another dimension. Good movies bring happiness, joy, enlightenment. But the bad ones have a far more nefarious intention. Imagine it, being that dedicated, waiting in line for months just to see what great new vision lies ahead for Star Wars. And then, what happened at the end of the movie? We'd never ever forget.
It was like 1,000 voices cried out in terror, and I will not let them be silenced!
Your incompetence entering the plot hole and causing the chain reaction wave to happen through space and time is what allowed Gabler to be awakened after 7 years of being sealed away since the Great War. Now some of us are still picking at the pieces you left in order to save the Reviewerverse.
Before the birth of mankind, there was Death Mothix. Death Mothix gave birth to both God and Satan, and in return, heaven and hell. Death Mothix would remain hidden from the rest of the world within the bounds of Mount Fuji. And when mankind would sprout its way onto the planet Earth, religions surrounding the two would be established years forward. Other deities, like Santa Christ, Super Mega Death Christ, the Entity, and the King of Worms, to name a few, are also established. Within these deities also exists the avatar of decent humor, aka the living embodiment of comedy. Born from the winds of primordial creation, she, the youngest of the 12 abstracts, watched as the rivers rose and giants became men, although 5 of her beloved sisters were destroyed at the titanium gates of hyperbole, and over eons, she slowly forgot her true name. Within the establishment of mankind on Earth, representing good and evil, Jack and darkness went to war. Jack would reign victorious over darkness, but at the cost of his own life. Their battle will not be seen for many millennia. Before the existence of the main Reviewerverse timeline, there was Nerdaria, a world driven by nerd culture, and where everyone was equal. It was governed by the River Triad, consisting of Apollo Z-Hack, Ares, and Cinera. But soon, the divide of fandoms began to break through as the Nerdpocalypse caused the fall of Nerdaria and its people. The second evolution foresaw the rise of Apollo becoming a reviewer for hire, and his foretold destiny in either becoming the Reviewerverse's savior or destroyer. Soon confronting a rogue Cinera who wanted to restore Nerdaria, the two fought until the Reviewerverse once again fell and eventually rebirthed itself for a third and potential final time. The weapons known as Rever Units, once used by the Triad themselves, would be destroyed, with one of them, originally belonging to Ares, would find itself in a new timeline. Throughout the infinite possibilities of time and space, fictional realities, alternate/interdimensions, dark realities, and many more are created, including the Mega and Ultraverses. Though the fictional dimensions were inaccessible, these worlds can be viewed through films and other media as manifested projections within the Reviewerverse. Outside space and time, beings called the Temlins became godlike deities. With such power, they eventually got bored over time and created the Contest of Champions to entertain themselves by inviting beings from across the known multiverses to partake in the games. In return, they would hand their grand prizes from all across the multiverse, ranging from advanced weaponry and dangerous artifacts. However, they can only be operated in the universe they originated from. Meanwhile, the Multiversal Magic Council is established to maintain order of magic use within the multiverse. The council would also create pocket spaces for members' personal use. Within the Common Era, Eldoria is established. Around this time, an alchemist named Aeon befriends Malachite, a wizard who bears the power of a magic glove known as Malachite's Hand. Under the orders of their king, the two friends challenged one another to determine which was superior, magic or technology. Aeon is victorious in the battle. As for Malachite, he was given immortality by the alchemist. Aeon's ring is then lost to time. Around the 1580s, a group called the Guardians of Imagination are formed in order to defeat a being known as the Nightmare. They sealed away the Nightmare in a parallel dimension within the west coast of North America, of what would now be known as Anaheim, California. As the 19th century began, on September 29th, 1889, Nintendo is founded, and around this time, a man known as Ichi Warion, who roamed the lands of Japan, caught the attention of Nintendo, who believed that he was destined to fight against the great evil on their behalf. Nintendo would secretly develop advanced weaponry for the Warion in order to defeat said evil. But upon defeating the great evil, Ichi Warion would lose his powers. In the following year, on August 20th, H.P. Lovecraft is born, thus transitioning to the 20th century. Somewhere around the 1900s and 1930s, Scarsdale Manor is built by Obed Scarsdale in order to imprison a being of living sound known as the Voice, which sought to end our world as we know it. However, it begins to manifest itself around the house and begins to influence those who step foot into it. It is around this time where H.P. Lovecraft would befriend Obed Scarsdale. A man by the name of Anderson, one of Scarsdale's best friends, grows concerned about the artifacts that Scarsdale has collected over the years. However, this does not concern Emma, Scarsdale's maiden, who takes care of the artifacts. Anderson demands Scarsdale to fire her, escalating to the point where Scarsdale kicks him out of the manor. Anderson would then find his way back, and in a fit of rage, shot the maiden, and then turned the gun on himself. Scarsdale never learned why this happened, but theorized that the two at one point were lovers before they had a falling out. However, unbeknownst to Scarsdale, the truth was far more sinister, as Emma originally wanted to release the Voice into the world, as Anderson put a stop to it for good. But on a much lighter note, on October 16th, 1923, the Walt Disney Company would be founded. On March 15th, 1937, H.P. Lovecraft would pass away at the age of 46. On September 1st, 1939, World War II would begin. In between 1941 and 1945, the United States Army would join the Allied forces in their fight against the Axis powers. During America's involvement with World War II and before the end of the war, a fighter pilot would perish in combat due to a supposed glitch gremlin sabotaging the pilot's plane. And on September 2nd, 1945, World War II would come to an end. In the years that would follow, an alien spacecraft crash lands on Roswell, New Mexico. Dubbed the Roswell Incident, the US government would cover it up as a simple hoax. However, what they found at the crash site were various pieces of alien metal that appeared almost tinfoil-like. This new raw material would later be sent to Area 51 for further experimentation. It is around this time in which Dr. Xandar is employed to work at Area 51, as he is tasked with the Roswell project, as well as being the head of reverse engineering. Tinkering around the alien metal, the government tasked Dr. Xandar to rebuild the Roswell spaceship, but Dr. Xandar turned down the offer, and as a result, he was removed by the US government and could no longer work at Area 51. On July 17, 1955, Disneyland is built on top of an orange grove. Unbeknownst to Walt Disney and its developers, the theme park also happens to be where the Nightmare was sealed away by the original members of the Guardians of Imagination. Later that same year, on November 1st, the Vietnam War would begin, as many Americans, including Mother Cutter Carl, Non-Ninja, and Jackie Danielson, are drafted into the conflict. On June 3rd, 1960, the Sega Corporation was founded, and another video game company in the form of Atari would be established on June 27th, 1972. And in April 30th, 1975, the Vietnam War would come to a close. 2 years later, on May 25th, Lucasfilms released Star Wars, ushering in a beloved and controversial franchise, creating a new wave of fans within the world of geek culture. On the following day, the Republic of Molossia was founded in Dayton, Nevada by Kevin Baugh. Coming back to Dr. Xandar, he reaches out to a video game developer by the name of Howard Scott Warshaw, who discusses with the scientist about embedding secrets within the codes of video games. Dr. Xandar began working on mapping out a digital layout of the Area 51 floor design. Around this time, Warshaw began developing the video game adaptation of Steven Spielberg's E.T. for the Atari 2600. The game was rushed into production for a Christmas release, just as Dr. Xandar offered the secret codes to Warshaw. When distributed, the game was criticized for its poor quality. It would soon be labeled as one of the worst video games ever made. After this, the government ordered all copies of the game to be buried in a landfill site in the deserts of Nevada. Sometime later, the Alejandro Jodorowsky movie adaptation of Dune was released, but it contained so much Geiger aesthetic that it created a quantum singularity that would have destroyed the universe. The alien vampires known as Draculons, who were the superior cousins to the original vampires, moved in and stopped this from happening by erasing the film from existence, resulting in the creation of the Flamingo Kid film to keep the paradox stable. Game store clerk Chuck Jaffers begins research on developing a LARP game called The Gauntlets of Razbataz. Around this time, Chuck would befriend Malachite, who ended up becoming obsessed with Chuck's game, believing it could be the link to finding his gauntlet. Using his knowledge of coordinating the location of the gauntlet, Chuck hid the clues upon realizing Malachite's true intentions. Jaffers attempts to banish Malachite in a magic book, but ends up getting trapped himself, sealing away the secrets for Malachite and those in search of the gauntlet. In 1985, a woman by the name of Una St. James was given the mantle of the first blockbuster buster by Lorelei, the patron saint of fandom. Utilizing illegal satellite communications, she would air her show through the television screens of many across the nation. Una St. James would also receive a magical weapon in the form of a yo-yo, based on her love of the character Princess from the G-Force anime series. Because of its channeling abilities, it is rumored that the weapon was once the original Excalibur, as well as the mythological weapon used by Thor, Mjolnir. Una St. James's influence would inspire a young Erod as he became a fan of her show. At some point in the young man's youth, Erod would successfully steal Death's ring and would wear it for years to come. Around the 1990s, Una St. James is revoked of her title as the Blockbuster Buster after attempting to assassinate Steven Spielberg for creating Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Around this time, the Paladins of Hope are established as a knightly order to safeguard geek culture. Also around this time, the Necron Empire also emerges to do battle against the Paladins. Master Paladin Alexander Knowledge fathers two sons, Arthur and Caesar, in hopes that one day, one of them will become a Grand Master of the Paladins of Hope. But it is through this moment in time where Alexander and the rest of the Paladins are attacked by the Necron Empire and perish in combat. Caesar is placed under the care of the Necron Empire, and Arthur is secluded away from the Paladins to live a life of normalcy, taken in by a man by the name of Sensei. Although prior to the events that occurred throughout the 1990s, on December 26, 1991, the Soviet Union would collapse, and as a result, over 6 countries gained their independence. One of these countries being the dictatorship called Afghanistan, ruled over by an immortal empress/self-proclaimed goddess, Diamanda Hagen, who believed that in another life, they were Jerrica Benton from Gem and the Holograms. On May 19th, 1999, Star Wars The Phantom Menace would be released to theaters, causing mass hysteria within cinemas and moviegoers. This ultimately unleashed the power of the living embodiment of bad movies itself, Mouse Cinema, to grow stronger and influence bad movies to prosper. Among the individuals who saw the film on opening night was a Draculon by the name of Tograph, which led him to a path of villainy. While working on various blue-collar jobs, Erod also saw The Phantom Menace on opening night and would consider it the worst film that he ever saw at the time. After coming home from the premiere, was greeted by Lorelai, who gave him the power to become the next blockbuster buster, succeeding Una St. James. And on January 2001, Sega would cease production in developing video game consoles. And due to the failure of the Sega Dreamcast, Sega publicly outed one of their employees by the name of Kid for the failure of the console's release. Upon Kid's departure from the company, he would create a splinter group called Aegis, vowing to take down Nintendo for good and obtain the Warrion power in order to become the #1 gaming company in the entire world. In 2002, a young Matthew Walker would be kidnapped by a white supremacist and child predator after the disappearance of his biological mother. 2 weeks later, Walker would then be recruited by a government agent to partake in a super soldier program called Project Centurion. And it is through this project that Walker would earn the nickname Silverwolf. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you're new to this channel. Also, make sure you hit that notification bell for updates on new content. If you are curious to learn more about Reviewerverse lore, make sure you check out the description down below and click the link that will redirect you to the Reviewerverse retrospective playlist. I just want to clarify that all footage and images used in this video belong to their respective creators. This has been Spectroheliotic, dropping the mic.